long before the abbey became a ruin, before ivy throttled its bell tower and rain hollowed the stone steps. The monastery of St. Aurelian stood as a place of order perched above a river gorge. Pilgrims once climbed the winding road to kneel beneath its arches, believing the monks there guarded sacred texts older than the nation itself. What remains today is a skeleton of gray stone roof collapsed, cloister fractured, chapel open to the sky, yet those who approach the site insist it is far from lifeless. They say the monastery still watches. The first thing visitors notice is the carvings. Every archway, every pillar, every lintel is etched with faces, saints, martyrs, unnamed figures with hollowed cheeks and elongated eyes. Time has softened their features, but not their gaze. The eyes are everywhere round, almond-shaped, deeply recessed, sometimes barely suggested by two shallow hollows. Tourists laugh nervously when they arrive, joking that medieval artists had an obsession. But laughter fades as people move deeper into the complex. More than one guide has remarked that the eyes seem to turn, subtly, when you are not looking directly at them. At first, this is dismissed as an optical illusion. The carvings are asymmetrical, shadows shift as clouds pass overhead. Yet accounts repeat the same detail, the sense of being followed. Walk through the nave, and the eyes in the apse feel fixed on your back. Enter the refectory, and the carved saints along the walls appear to lean inward, their stares converging. Even seasoned archaeologists, accustomed to ancient symbolism, have admitted discomfort. One described it as standing inside a thought. Local legends say the monks believed sight was a form of prayer. To see, truly see, was to acknowledge the divine presence in all things. The abbey's founder, Abbot Lucien of the Third Order, wrote that the world is watched by God as the shepherd watches the flock, and that monks should strive to mirror that vigilance. Some scholars interpret the carvings as symbolic reminders of God's omniscience. Others believe the monastery housed a sect that practiced perpetual observation, monks assigned to watch day and night, never closing their eyes during prayer. But legends rarely remain symbolic for long. When the site was first opened to the public in the 1970s, local authorities hired night guards to prevent vandalism and theft. The position paid well, given the isolation, but turnover was immediate. Guards refused to work alone. Some quit after a single shift. Others lasted a week before submitting written complaints that were quietly filed away and forgotten. They all mentioned the same thing, the whispers. It began just after dusk, when the last tourists left and the valley filled with fog. Guards reported hearing low murmurs drifting through the ruins, soft, rhythmic, like breath shaped into words. At first it sounded like Latin prayer, familiar enough in cadence to be comforting. But as guards strained to listen, the language slipped away from recognition. Consonants tangled unnaturally. Vowels stretched too long. The prayers did not rise or fall as human speech should. They circled, looping back on themselves. One guard, a former seminarian, claimed he recognized fragments of Greek, Aramaic, and something else he could not name. Another said the words sounded like they were being spoken backward and forward at the same time. Most disturbing of all was the sense that the prayers were not meant to be heard aloud. They felt internal, as though the monastery itself was thinking. Authorities blamed acoustics. Wind through broken arches can produce strange effects, especially at night. But that explanation failed to account for the pattern. The whispers always began near the chapel, then spread outward, filling the cloister, the dormitory, the scriptorium. And they always stopped at dawn. Then there were the eyes. Guards swore the carvings changed after dark. Faces that were indistinct by day appeared sharper at night, their eye sockets deeper, more defined. Some claimed they reflected moonlight even when no reflective material remained. One man described passing the chapel altar and seeing every carved face turn toward him at once. He dropped his flashlight and ran, leaving his equipment behind. He never returned to retrieve it. Another guard, documented in a report that was later leaked, stated that he felt compelled to pray. He was not religious. Yet, standing alone in the nave at midnight, surrounded by watching stone, he dropped to his knees without understanding why. Words formed in his mouth, words he did not know, prayers he had never learned. He said it felt like remembering something forgotten rather than learning something new. When morning came, he could not recall the words, only the overwhelming certainty that something had listened. Psychologists suggested suggestion and stress. Isolation breeds anxiety. Ancient religious settings trigger subconscious responses. But the reports continued even after guards were rotated in pairs. Even then, no one would patrol the abbey alone. Partners stayed within sight of each other, communicating constantly over radios that crackled with interference near the chapel. In 1993, a restoration project uncovered something unexpected beneath the collapsed floor of the scriptorium, a sealed chamber, its entrance deliberately hidden. Inside were rows of stone benches arranged in a circle, all facing inward. The walls were carved floor to ceiling with eyes, thousands of them, overlapping, layered, staring toward a central depression in the floor. At its center lay a stone basin, worn smooth as if by centuries of touch. No human remains were found, but traces of wax, ash, and incense suggested prolonged ritual use. Carbon dating placed the chamber's construction centuries after the monastery's founding, contradicting official records. There were no mentions of such a space in surviving documents. It was as if the monks themselves had tried to forget it. After the discovery, the whispers intensified. Restoration workers reported hearing chanting even during daylight. Tools went missing, only to be found arranged carefully around the basin in the hidden chamber. One worker swore he saw movement in the carving's stone eyelids fluttering shut when he turned on the lights. The project was halted indefinitely. The chamber was resealed, its existence officially denied. Yet word spread. Paranormal investigators arrived, eager to document the phenomenon. Most lasted a single night. Audio recordings captured murmurs beneath the range of normal hearing frequencies that, when slowed down, resembled layered voices speaking in unison. Video footage showed shadows moving independently of any light source, gathering near carved faces before dispersing. Skeptics argued equipment malfunction. Believers argued something far older was at work. Local folklore offers a darker explanation. According to one tale, the monks believed God had turned his gaze from the world during a time of great suffering, plague, famine, war. In desperation, they sought to replace that gaze with their own. Through relentless prayer and ritual, they attempted to create a watcher, a collective consciousness born of devotion and fear. The eyes were not symbols, but anchors, points of focus for something meant to observe in God's absence. If that is true, then the monastery was never meant to be abandoned. Today, access to the ruins is restricted. Warning signs cite structural instability, but locals know better. Even tourists who sneak past the barriers report the same sensations: the pressure behind the eyes, the feeling of being weighed and measured. Some claim their dreams change afterward, filled with stone corridors and whispered prayers. A few report waking with words on their lips in languages they do not speak. Night guards are no longer stationed at the site. Cameras monitor the perimeter instead. Yet footage often shows unexplained movement within the ruins, slow shifts of shadow, brief glints where no light should catch. Sometimes, at precisely 3:17 a.m., all cameras lose signal for exactly 60 seconds. When they come back online, nothing appears disturbed. The abbey stands silent once more, its carvings eroded but intact, eyes open to the sky. Wind moves through broken arches like breath through lungs. Whether the monastery watches out of faith, fear, or hunger is unknown. But one thing is certain to those who have stood within its walls at night: the eyes do not close.